Welcome everyone to LifeQI webinar. This is one of our Getting Started webinars. My name is Jason Williams, part of the LifeQI team here today. Pleased to be able to deliver this webinar, and I've got my colleague Lewis on the line as well, who's going to be helping me manage the session. This is going to be all about kind of guiding you through getting started, kind of first getting logged in, setting up your first project, navigating around LifeQI, kind of the basics really. Quite a lot to cover, but it'll give you a good kind of introduction to this, to LifeQI. We're also recording this, so if you don't keep up with everything as we move through it, we will be sending out the recording by email. It normally takes a couple of days before we send that email out, but you should get a link, in a couple of days' time with all the information, so you can watch it back or share that recording with colleagues as well. It'd be good to know kind of who we've got online today. So if you want to drop us a message into the chat and kind of say where you're joining from, or which organization you represent, please feel free to do so. Good to kind of know who we've got on the line. Also, if you've got any particular upfront questions, expectations, or whether any kind of background experience or no experience at all with LifeQI, it's kind of useful to understand that at the beginning of this session as well. That will help me kind of tailor the session as we dive in. But once we get going, if you've got any questions that you want to ask, there should be a Q&A piece in the menu that you can click on. If you post your questions in there, that would be really helpful. It makes it a bit easier for us to manage them. But any kind of general comments and things you can put into the chat and share with the whole audience, or just with Lewis and I, that's kind of up to you. We'll try and pick those up as we go through. And it looks like we've got a question coming already.
Chat is disabled.
Where is it? Weird. I can see the chat. I don't know. Save chat. Okay, give me a second. See whether that's made any difference. Just set it so attendees can chat with everyone. Oh, yeah, someone's coming on the chat. Yeah. There we go. Yep, working now. It's a good start.
Yes.
Get the basics right. Cool. Okay, chat's working. The Q&A is working because we've already had that. It's the chat, this working question come through. So that's a good start. Cool. Okay, I think we're about ready to go. As I said, post any questions in the Q&A, any general comments in the chat. We'll try and pick them up as we work through. So let's get started. Let me get the screen share going. I'm going to assume that most people online either haven't really experienced LifeQI at all or are kind of fairly new to it. So we'll start with a very brief introduction via the website before we dive into the system itself. So just in case you're entirely new to LifeQI, a basic introduction is that it's basically a web platform for running and tracking healthcare improvement work. It's kind of it in a nutshell. And I've brought up the website, which is lifeqisystem.com, in case you haven't been there before. And so if you are fairly new, you can come here and kind of learn all about what the system is and what it's used for before you dive in and create an account, if that's helpful. So you've got the homepage, the load of information on here, but I'd recommend kind of checking out the feature pages, all about the tools, community and reporting, different features that we've got, the use cases as well. This menu here talks about the different ways in which organizations use it. So that's kind of some really helpful stuff in there. Also worth pointing out in the resources area, there's all sorts of things in here. So the blog, there's loads of information on the blog, particularly lots of articles about improvement, how to do improvement, different parts of the method, different tools, all sorts of stuff in there. So it's worth having a look at. Webinars, you've probably already been to that page and registered for today. The Help Center, I'll touch on in a moment, but that's got all the really detailed kind of how-to articles on how to do everything in LifeQI, including short tutorial videos and step-by-step guides. That's a really helpful resource. Improvement Hub, Improvement Resources are where we've collected a lot of our articles together, and ebooks and templates and things like that you can download. And then the Getting Started area I'll pull up in a second, because that's where we're going to kind of use to facilitate today's session. Before I dive into that, a couple of other useful links just to point out on the homepage. You can come to the website here, and from here you can log in, and if you're brand new and your organization isn't already using LifeQI, you can use the free trial button in the top right hand corner to get set up with a free account and check it out. Or if you've already got one, just come here to log in, and if you haven't got an account already, you can create one through that login button as well. So there's useful links up here. It's worth bookmarking the main website URL if you haven't already got it. Okay, So the getting started section, so you can get to resources, getting started, that will lead you into this area. This is really just where we've collected a lot of useful information to help different sorts of users get to grips with LiveQI. So we've got general users, which is what we're going to concentrate on today. People who are generally involved in setting up or working on improvement projects, working with their colleagues using the QI tools. A couple of other user types that we have as well: sponsors, kind of exec sponsor within the organization, responsible for kind of the improvement activity and how they would use LiveQI. There's some information here. The admin users, so people who are kind of the gatekeepers, people who manage your access to LiveQI, and gurus are kind of your super users. So that we could have some of them online today. But what we're going to do, because this is getting started, is we're going to concentrate on the kind of the general user information, basically. Right. Let me click on this, load up that, and you're going to use this as kind of as our agenda, really. As I said, general users are the people who kind of involved in setting up projects or populating, kind of running projects. You might be leading a project, you might be a team member on a project. So what we're going to guide through is how to do that, how to set up a project, how to populate it, how to invite your team members, those sorts of things. Those are kind of the key responsibilities. So yeah, some of this stuff is what we're going to work through today. So it's useful to be aware of this page. You can always come back to that and check it out in a bit more detail in a slower time. Let's dive into the system and we'll begin to have a bit of a look around. So I'm not going to go through the signing up process. That's pretty straightforward. Just a few fields to fill out and punch in your email address, creating a password, that sort of thing. Once you're logged in, though, you'll land on your start page, which will look a little something like this. First time you come in, and yours is going to be a bit emptier than this, but over time it will begin to build up. And the start page is really a quick links through to everything that you're kind of directly connected to in the system. So key thing being projects. Again, first time you log in, this might be blank unless you've already been invited to a project. As you can see, I've already got a range of projects that I'm a team member on. So if I want to work on pressure sores today, I just click on that and it'll take me into that project and we can get going. Other useful things you've got here, I can manage things like invitations. So my colleague Andrew has invited me to a new project a couple of days ago. I can accept or decline that. I've pinned another colleague's profile so I can kind of see what they're up to. You will have your organization's kind of profile already kind of linked here. So you can click on that and it'll take you through to your organization's profile and see the full list of projects across the organization. And then, this continues down the page, any programs you're on, any groups you're connected to, that sort of thing. So that will build up over time. But as I said, will probably be fairly blank the first time you land in the system. Over here on the left-hand side, you've got the main menu. So these are all the different areas that make up LiveQI. We're not going to go through all of those today. It's kind of mainly about the projects area, basically. Before I dive into creating a project, a couple of other things quickly. You'll notice I've put my nice pretty picture in here. When you first come in, we obviously won't have your photo already, but if you click in your kind of icon in the top right-hand corner, a couple of options here. So you get into your profile, and there you can update your name, you can upload a profile photo, that sort of thing. Another useful one to point out is the preferences in here. We've got language settings. So anyone who's coming from, another country, I think we've got 7 different languages available in the system. So you can change it from English to another language. There's even US English in there that will change most of the S's to Z's if that's kind of your preference as well. So it's worth checking that out and then making sure that that's set to the appropriate language for you before you really get too far in. Okay, let's dive in. Let's start creating a project. So to do that, I'm going to go into the projects area. Let's say I've already got a bunch of projects, so I can see my projects and I can get into my projects. But the first time you land here, if you haven't already got any, this list is going to be blank. And what I want to draw your attention to is the Start a New Project button in the top right-hand corner. Basically, that's always going to be the place where you're going to start a new project. So we just click on that, and a little guide's going to pop up, and it's going to kind of guide us through that initial project setup. I'm going to skip over that. You won't have that. It's just because I'm logged in as my super user account. So a few steps we need to work through. It's fairly straightforward. Any of these red fields, of which this is one of only a very few, are mandatory. So I have to fill this out. But other these gray fields I don't have to fill out. I can skip them and come back to them later. But let's give this project a name. I'm just going to call it Learn LiveQI. So I'm not going to bore you with filling out all of these fields, but you can see, just quickly type in them. You'll better come back to them later and update them as well if you need to. Skip through to the next piece, aim and rationale. If I'm not really sure what I need to type into these little I buttons or information buttons, if you click on those, you get this little pop-up, and this will give you a bit of kind of contextual help as to what you should be writing in these fields. So here, because it's the aim statement, it's giving us some information on what makes up an aim statement and kind of a good example, bad example, basically. So they're really helpful if you're fairly new to QI and you don't understand some of the terminology. So learn. Going to be a quick aim statement there. Skip through, remove, miss some of the rest of that. So this is an important one. Who's on the project team? This is the first opportunity to start to add other people to the project. I don't have to do it now. I can do it later once I've kind of finished setting up the project. But this is, yeah, certainly the first opportunity. You're obviously already on it because you're creating it, and it will also automatically be linked to your organization for visibility and for reporting and for kind of data ownership purposes. But if you do wish to invite anyone else at this point, you've got this invite new members, a dark button up here. If I click on that, it's going to give me a list. So this list is showing me the people that I frequently add to projects. So it's kind of my frequent team members, but I can just search in here for anyone in my organization, or in fact, anyone in the system. So let's just look for someone who isn't on that list. So Kerry Preston, who one of my colleagues, yeah, say I want to add her to my project. So I click on her profile and I'll now get a couple of options as to what role I want to give her on the project and what level of access. So if I click into the drop down, I can give her a different role on the project. Say we're going to make her the sponsor. The default permissions it will give her is she'll be able to view and edit the contents of the project, but she won't be able to admin the project. If I wish to change that, I just click on the box and it'll kind of change those basically. The difference here is admin will allow her to add and remove other people from the project, and also delete the project as well. So let's say I don't want her doing that, but I do want her to be able to add data and things like that. So I'm going to give her edit permissions. Then confirm that by clicking that. So that was adding someone to my project who's already got an account. And what it will do in a minute, it says ready to invite. So when I finish this process, it will fire off an email to Kerry saying Jason's invited you to join his project, and she can accept or decline that. However, if you want to include someone who doesn't have an account yet, you can do that too. So click back on this invite new members button. Let's scroll down to the bottom here. You've got a can't find someone button. So if I click on that, it will give me another option. So now I just need to punch in someone's email address. Punch their email address. You don't have to do this piece. And what that will then do, again, when I finish this setup process, it will send an email to that person saying, Jason's invited you to join his project. First, you need to click on this link and sign up to LifeQI. Once they've done that, they will then have access to the project. And that's a really good way of bringing new people into the system rather than them just creating an account and then going to look for your project sort of thing. You can invite them directly to a project. It's a good way of getting them into the system. So I'd certainly recommend that. But yeah, everyone who has access to your project will need their own user account that will be linked to their workplace email. So if you want to build up the team and give everyone access, you do need to go through the process of kind of inviting everyone to the project, basically. Let's say I'm just going to leave it as myself and Kerry for the moment. As I said, I can add more people to that later. Before we move on, look at the privacy. So important couple of options here. The default setting here, as you can see, is only members can view the project. So that's only people that I've added, or only people that work at this organization will be able to see the contents of my project. And further to that, only the people with edit permission here will be able to change anything on my project. So that's the default setting. So your project will be viewable by other people at your organization who have an account. The alternative to that is everyone can view. And that will allow everyone on LifeQI, so even those outside your organization, to see the contents of your project. That's restricted to the country that you're in, and we have a different version of LifeQI in each country, but it would allow people from other organizations to see the contents of your project. Not edit it, but they would be able to view the content, which is why the default setting is only members can view. You'd only change that if you've kind of got permission to do so as part of your kind of information governance. But there are many cases where people do that, good reasons for that. That's yeah, just not the default setting. nearly finished with the setup. So yeah, categorizing the project, you can link it to priorities. So your organization may well have defined a number of improvement priorities, and they'll be encouraging you to kind of link your project to those for kind of reporting purposes, basically. So if you click that, if your organization does already have any priorities set up, they'll pop up in a list like this. Let's say this one's to do with patient experience. I've clicked on that. Click back to this menu, and you can see it's added the kind of made that link, basically. Quite important because it's going to help a lot of the reporting that the organization will do will be driven by, which projects are linked to which priorities, basically. So I've made that link, which is good. And then I can tag the project as well. Your organization might have some predefined tags that they encourage you to use, ways in which they want to categorize it, or you can just kind of add your own tags. That's going to help with people searching and finding your project, but also some of the reports and dashboards will be driven by certain tags. It's a bit like adding hashtags to the project. That's pretty straightforward. And then last step here, start and end dates. So it's going to put in today's date and a month ahead, just as the default, but you come in and change those, and you can just type in a location where the project is going to be taking place, and then click create project. So that little guide that we had to go through, I have to complete that for the project to be saved and kind of registered on LifeQI. If I had cancelled out of that, the project wouldn't exist anywhere. But that's the first sort of chartering type process, basically. That's it saved, and we're now going to have a quick of a look around and kind of the rest of the project. Before I do that, just going to pause to see if there are any questions or any comments I need to pick up on, Lewis.
I've just had a question come through. But there was one in the chat as well. So do people you invite need to have a license as well? So I think that's referring to when you're inviting users during the project creation stage.
Yeah, I have to take that one quickly. So yeah, when you invite anyone that you give access to or invite to have access, will need to create a user account, and they will need to be given a user license as part of that process. And your admin users will be kind of in control, if you like, of handing out that license as that person signs up. So yes, one account and one license per person.
Bro, thanks for clarifying, Jace. Also, the question that's come into the Q&A part. So how do we make graphs and charts in LifeQI? I think you're going to be coming up to that in a moment.
Yep, we'll get to that in a minute. So I'll hold fire on that one and pick that up in a minute. Cool, thank you. Okay, let's keep going. So yeah, we've come into the project now. You can see the title. It's opened up a number of other pages, which we'll have a look at. And this glance panel at the top has also kind of appeared, which will begin to be populated as we move through this kind of project process. We've also got these little project guides that pop up that try and encourage you to do the next logical thing, basically. So it wants me to go build my driver diagram next, and then it will pop up along here, sort of thing. I'm going to close that for the moment and just show you the rest of the page before we do that. So basically the information I just entered is now saved on this general page. If I want to come in and make any further changes, I just click edit, and all of these fields will be changeable, basically. So it's all there, and I can't accidentally change it. You do need to click edit to make those changes. Yeah, but then you've got these pages that have now opened up, and we're going to now work through kind of checking those out and building out the rest of the project, basically. So yeah, let's go to the driver diagram. That's next up on the list. The idea here is we've built the driver diagram tool into LifeQI, so no kind of going and creating it in PowerPoint or anything like that and kind of uploading it or sending it anywhere. You get to build it right here, basically. So yeah, to edit the diagram, and I need to edit it to start adding drivers. So yeah, most pages you'll find these little gray kind of edit buttons in the top right-hand corner, or like an add button depending on the page that you're on. So I've clicked that. This has now changed, and it's basically become editable. So my aim statement is already there because I defined that when I set up the project, but I've now got this little plus symbol, and I can start clicking that, and it will start drawing drivers for me and drawing the lines. So I'm not going to come up with anything great here, but I can start to kind of do that and build across the page. So I've clicked that, it will create a secondary one for me. Driver 2, and then you can go further across the page, the change idea. So I've got a nice simple line of drivers there. If I want to go and add some more below, if I just click that plus, it kind of, you can see the LifeQI is going to start to sort of space all of this out for me. Again, do that. And let's have another idea as well. So you can see it starts to build. It does all of that spacing and all of that drawing for you, basically. And it will kind of automatically just add the next one to the bottom sort of thing. If you build out one of these and they're kind of complicated and then you realize you've done it in a different order than you would like it to be in, you click that automatic ordering button, it will change it to manual ordering, and then you'll be able to drag and drop these boxes kind of up and down. So you better, stick driver 4 above driver 2 if you wanted to do that. Can be helpful once you've got quite a lot going on the page. Other thing to point out while we're here is colors, basically. So these boxes are all black clearly at the moment. If I want to kind of color code them in some way, I can do that. If I click manage colors, it's a little color picker here. I can select a few colors that I want to use and then label them. Come up with some helpful way of kind of labeling, not just the names of the colors, but if you want to, rag rate your driver diagram or theme it based on, clinical interventions or governance interventions or whatever it might be, pick colors for them, label them clearly. You'll see that legend then appear at the bottom, and I can now add these colors to my driver diagram. So let's just say, just for the sake of speed, I'm going to make all of these bottom ones down here blue. They're all the blue themed. Then you just click through, making all the others whatever color you want, basically. It's kind of helpful, just adds an extra dimension to the diagram when people kind of come to see what's going on, basically. So yeah, I've built the first version of that out. I'm going to click save. And I can see it's now kind of taken away all those edit functions and simplified that back down. Here's the beginnings of my, version 1 driver diagram. So it was nice and straightforward and quick. And the idea is it's just quicker to do it here than it is to do it in PowerPoint. And I don't now need to email it or upload it anywhere. It's there. The rest of the team can see that, basically. If I want to make any further changes, click edit again and go through that process. And as you kind of do that and you build up almost like different versions of it as you iterate through it, you're going to then be able to go into the history button, and that will show you every version of the driver diagram that you've kind of created as part of this project. So that's a quick look at the driver diagram. We look now through to measures and charts, and we'll pick up on that question from earlier. What we've just noticed is another question: is it possible to have tertiary drivers? It's not at the moment. So just go back to the driver diagram. The sort of the number of columns, if you like, that we've got are at this stage at the moment are fixed from aim, primary, secondary, and change ideas. We can't add an extra column into this. We are working on some new tools and adding flexibility into some of the existing tools, so that I believe that is something that is going to be possible, but not yet. Probably, don't know, probably not until maybe next year, I would imagine. But yeah, more flexibility around the driver diagram is coming.
Just got a quick question, Jay. Sorry to upset the flow. That's coming to the chat just whilst you're on driver diagrams. Can you give some examples on drivers 1 and 2? So the primary and secondary drivers, what might that be?
Sure. Okay. So yeah, I guess getting a little bit more into the sort of the improvement methodology here, but the idea is you take your aim statement and kind of break it down into what are the main or primary things that affect that aim statement, and then what are the slightly more detailed things that would affect whatever you've put in here, and then what are the even more detailed kind of ideas for change that are going to affect this column. Now, if I'd come up with some real drivers, that would make a bit more sense. I think the example that I was first taught that always makes a lot of sense is if your aim was to lose a certain amount of weight, then the primary drivers, the things that control your weight, are things like calories in and calories out. So you could then look at, okay, well, what are the slightly more detailed things that affect the number of calories in? That's going to be like the type of food that I eat, the volume of food that I eat, how frequently I eat. So you could those could potentially be secondary drivers, versus calories out would be like how frequently I exercise, how much I exercise, what sort of exercise I do. So those are you're kind of providing a bit more detail with every column that you move across the driver diagram. And then the idea being, you come up with a bunch of ideas for things that you're going to change, you're going to do differently. And if you can connect them up to one of your secondary drivers, and that connects up to one of your primary drivers, you're kind of showing that there's some logic between your idea and the overall aim statement. Can you make a logical link all the way through that, basically? So you're not just coming up with an idea that doesn't really fit with the aim statement. You're trying to show that kind of traceability. That's the idea. And the weight loss example is a bit crude, but I think it's a pretty useful one, kind of understanding that.
I've provided a help article on understanding driver diagrams as well, so that may be worth looking at for more information.
Thank you. Sounds good. All right, conscious of time, let's keep going then. So measures and charts. Obviously the first time we've come in here, so we don't have anything yet. But a bit like with our edit buttons, we've got our new buttons, grey on the right-hand side here. So we click that and it will now guide us through creating a measure, and we'll then be able to add data to that. So another one of these little guides that pops up with just 3 steps here. Mandatory field, I've got to give my measure a name. Just going to call this one new measure, and I've got to select a type. So if I click into that, I can see the options I've got: outcome, process, and balance measures. If I'm not sure what those types mean, then I click on the information button and it will give me some guidance. I've now got space to fill out my operational definition, which I'm going to skip over. Data collection plan, again, same sort of thing, and there's information on what you should be writing in there. I'm going to skip that for now. I can then get into picking chart type. So another one of these drop downs, as you can see with the little arrow. So if I click into that, give me the full list of these are the different chart types I've got. So these are all run charts, control charts, basically. It's all kind of in the SBC space. It's all about data over time, what you're measuring through the course of the project. So you can see, I think it's 7 types of control chart and your run chart. If you know what all of these letters stand for and you know whether your data aligns, then great, pick the right one. If you're not sure, I'd recommend clicking on this, need help choosing a chart, and that will pop up this little, almost like a little catalog of the different types that we've got. And if you click through those, it'll give you a description of what that chart type is for, typical examples, and then the data that you would need to capture. So let's say I'm going to go with a P chart for this particular measure. I'm going to have, time, count, and total, numerator, denominator. So let's go with that. So I've selected my P chart. I've then got data collection frequency. So how frequently are we collecting the data? Is it a kind of a fixed frequency, a regular frequency? If so, pick the relevant one. That's going to really help with LifeQI kind of lay out the chart and particularly aggregate it if you're collecting data from multiple locations. But if it's not going to be fixed frequency, you've got a couple of options down the bottom here to pick from, or even an option if you just want to type in text. It's not necessarily going to be date based. But in this example, I'm going to go with a monthly chart. So skip through that now. And then the final step here is I can link this measure back to part of my driver diagram if I wish to do so. Totally optional, but it's kind of useful if this is going to be particularly related to one of my primary drivers. Click into that and select, right, it was going to be driver number 1, and click the plus and kind of make that linkage. And then if I go back to my driver diagram later, it will show that driver 1 has got a measure linked to it. So it's kind of a useful bit of traceability there, basically. Let's click create measure. So to get the data in, that's kind of a sort of a 2-step process. The first step we've just done is just saving now, is actually just creating, kind of structuring the measure. And then once that's saved, we can then start creating charts and adding data to it. If my Wi-Fi will keep up, you can see it's just loading and create that measure. And we'll then be able to, okay, then we've been taken through. So we're now into our new measure. We're landed on the charts section of that. Obviously, we haven't got any charts yet, but if I click over onto the plan piece there, it could take me back to basically all the information that I've just entered if I need to make any changes to that. But we're on the charts section. We're going to start adding in some data. You can add a chart button here. You can add multiple charts. So if you're collecting same data, but in, say, different locations, you can create a chart for each of those locations. And then there's this aggregate chart space down here. And if you start adding multiple charts in, it will then automatically build an aggregate chart for you. So you can see not just, say, hospital by hospital, how you're doing, but across all of the hospitals potential. It will aggregate that up for you to give you sort of the total view. Let's just go through adding data for one chart to begin with. So click that. Because we can add it from different locations, you've got to name this chart as well. So the measure has already got a name, but I get to kind of name this as well. So let's say collecting data from Abbey Ward. So I'm going to give that a name. Beginnings of my data sheet here. So these are just the column headings. If I want to add the first row, just click that. The row appears. So I can now, if I've just got one data point, I can just select the date, put in the count and the total. Or if I've already got a whole load of data, sort of baseline data that I want to get in there, I can do that and I can paste that in bulk, basically. So let's have a look at that, because that's the most common way of putting stuff in, is to kind of copy and paste it from a spreadsheet. So I've got a spreadsheet over here that's got a whole load of data in it for my different measures. The data sheet's formatted in the same way as in LifeQI. So I've got dates, I've got counts and totals. So it's important that we've got them kind of in the same format. And then I'm going to highlight kind of all the columns and all the rows that I want. And right click, copy that. Click back into here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click into this first cell, kind of the calendar cell, basically. Right click, or you could Control V sort of thing. Right click, paste, and it will take a second, but it will then just paste all of that data in. So there you go. You can see it's pasted in all the columns and all of the rows that I've taken from that spreadsheet. So I'm happy with that. If I now just click create chart, it's going to create my chart and add all that data in for me. So you can see it saved that, and I've now got this little row here, which is that Abbey Ward chart. So I could now repeat the process if I've got another chart, or if I click on this row, it will take me in, and I can have a look at the chart. Here we go. Here's the chart. Again, I've got an edit button up here, so I can't accidentally make any changes to the chart. If I want to make changes, I click the edit button. So let's do that. I'll show you a few things here. Before we change the chart, though, let's go down beneath the chart. Then I've got the data sheet, a bit like we saw a second ago, but it's now down here. So in here, I can come in and correct any of my data points, delete any of my data points, or if I scroll down to the bottom, I've got that add row button, so I could now repeat the process. Again, I could copy and paste into that if I've got the next raft of data. So yeah, make any changes once this is in edit mode. You can make some changes to the chart as well. There's a few different things you can do here. I guess before we do that, just kind of explain what we can see here. So it's a P chart. So the percentage has been calculated. So my data line is a percentage line. It's calculated the center line for me, and it's also calculated all of the control limits for me automatically, and the calculations that are relevant to a P chart. Because I've got a P chart and because I've got enough data points, it's also looking for special cause variation in the data for me. So there's these kind of pink bits up here. So high variation has been detected. And if I click on that, it'll give me the definition of high variation. Same thing over here, some more high variation, and it will look for the different special cause variation rules and highlight those for you. So there's no manually creating the chart, manually kind of doing that sort of analysis. It does all of that for you, basically. But you can annotate and edit the chart in a few different ways. So let's say I want to make a change based against, say, this particular data point. Now that I've got it in edit mode, if I click on a data point, I get a few different options. So I can add a note. I add that in there and it will appear at the top of the chart in a minute. And then I've got a drop down here. I could link in some PDSA cycles, which I haven't got yet on my project. We haven't got to that stage, but if I did, I'd be able to link them from here, and they would appear at the top of the chart. The other option I've got here is next phase. Let me just come out of that. I won't bother clicking it. But you can see we're in the baseline phase at the moment. If I wanted to move from baseline into the test phase, and I wanted to do that at this point, I'd basically click that, click next phase, and the baseline phase would finish there, and we'd then be in the test phase. So you've got that as well. Not going to go into any more detail on the charts, really. That was just sort of the basics of how to create them. We do run a separate webinar that's more of a deep dive on how to create and how to edit the charts and how to recalculate the control limits and those sorts of things. But that was just kind of the basics of how to create one. The last thing I will point out, though, is if you go to actions, you can export the chart and you can export the data up there as well. So it's kind of useful little pieces there. So okay, now we've added our one chart to our project. I'm not going to add any more charts to this particular measure. So if I'm going to click back to measures list, that will take me back up to the main kind of project menu here, and I can now go through the remaining pages. So next up, PDSAs. Again, first time here, so this is blank. I'm going to click new PDSA ramp, start to add the first ramp and the first cycle. Again, same sort of format. It's going to guide me through a few steps to create this. My first PDSA, that'll do for a title here. Same sort of free text fields. Again, these are gray, so I can skip over them. Change idea, so this will allow me to pick a change idea from my driver diagram, again, allowing you to kind of link up parts of the project if you want to do that. Skip through, who's responsible. Let's say we're going to make Kerry responsible for this one, and let's say it's going to happen later in September. it's going to happen. She's going to be doing it at the office, nice and straightforward. Give her some notes, a bit of description of what she needs to do. If I want to add in some tasks to really give her a kind of a helping hand of what she needs to do, I can add tasks and they'll start to appear in this list. I'm not going to bother with that now. It's nice and straightforward. Predict what's going to happen when she actually runs this PDSA cycle. So it's all just following the very standard kind of PDSA type template. All this is based on the RHI's PDSA template. We've just kind of built it into the system basically. So it's just encouraging you to do it in the same way every time, and you're not having to look for the template. You're always just following this little guide. And then the last option you got here is linking a measure. So again, just this opportunity to link up different parts of the project if you want to do that. I'm not going to bother now, just click create PDSA cycle. And that saved the PDSA cycle, saved my first PDSA. I've now got a tab here. I can go through to the task, start creating those if I did want to for Kerry. But I'm on the main PDSA tab. I can see the information that I've added already, click edit if I want to make any changes. And if I scroll down, I've now got a new section that's appeared, which is that do study act section, as you would expect. Again, click edit and I can start to fill this out as I've kind of worked through that PDSA cycle. Once you've done that, if you're ready to then plan the next one, you just click new cycle and it will open up the planning section for the new PDSA cycle that's part of this kind of overall ramp, basically. So that's nice and straightforward, nothing too crazy in there. It's just about kind of helping people step through the same process, fill out the same template. So yeah, that would be your first PDSA cycle. And so that kind of brings us to the end of kind of the core tool set, if you like, within the project. So that's kind of what's in every project in LifeQI. What you've then got is a few other pieces here. So we've got discussions. So the idea is it's not just about the tools and the data and the PDSA type stuff, but if you want to get the team together or if you're being supported remotely by someone else, you can have a lot of the discussion, the debate, keep kind of the narrative of the project going in a discussion thread, basically. So that doesn't have to be done off on email and your data's in Excel somewhere and something else is left somewhere else. Like if the team are working on the project, you try and bring them together in LifeQI, even if that's happening sort of asynchronously, basically. So yeah, you can create discussion threads. You can have multiple discussion threads. You can even change who's on those different discussion threads as part of the project. It's really just about bringing the team together to work on that project. So that's the last of the main pages, but there's a few bits over here on the right-hand side to point out as well. So as you can see our faces, the team area, so the people that first appeared when we set up the project. I've got exactly the same kind of buttons here. So if I want to now start adding more people, I can click that again and repeat the process that we did earlier on, just add more people to it. I can see that still waiting for Kerry to accept her invitation. She hasn't picked up that email yet, but once she has, she wouldn't be grayed out anymore. She'd be a signed up member like me. See her like that. This sort of bullet point thing down here, we've got a timeline. So a lot of this is automatically created. So as we go back to 28 minutes ago, the project was started, progress score was set, which I'll talk about in a minute. Kerry was invited, we've added a measure, we've added a PDSA cycle. So a lot of this will automatically get generated as people do things on the project. But you can also manually add to the timeline. And the most useful one, if you click that, what type of event do you want to add is a status update. So click that, and then what is my status update and what date do I want to pin it to? So I could even kind of do a retrospective or a future status update. This is really useful, just free text, keeping your team or other people that are kind of supporting the project up to date with what's going on. My first update, create that, it's going to add that to the state to the timeline there. So when people come back, they can see what's been happening, but they can also read these status updates. They're really helpful, and they also get fed into quite a lot of the reporting that might be done across the organization, so they can track the project and track these status updates. So yeah, I would encourage you to use that. Filing cabinet, nice and straightforward. Upload files, organize them into folders. Nothing too crazy there. And then the megaphone is basically a shortcut to a bit like a shortcut into a discussion thread. So you can post messages in here, click notify the team, and it'll email everyone to say that you've posted a message on this project, basically. Nice and straightforward. Right, let's go back to the general page though quickly. So I mentioned the progress score briefly there. So this is the score here. This is a project progress score. It appears on every project, and your organization will be tracking these to monitor how kind of advanced, how mature these projects are, basically. So when I first created the project, it came up as a 0.5, and it's now up to me or the team to update the score as we move through the process, basically. So I can click on them. They've all got standard titles and definitions as per the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. This is their scale. And it's up to me to kind of pick, right, planning for the project's begun. Yeah, I reckon we've done that. In fact, we'll probably activity, but no real change yet. We haven't really run a PDSA cycle, so we can probably say that project's a 2.0. So it's going to say we're not change that score basically, and that will automatically feed into any of the reporting and the dashboards that the organization are running. So it's really helpful to keep that up to date and to start leaving regular status updates as things happen on the project, as well as obviously, you know, adding in measures, adding in PDSA cycles. Those are the kind of the common areas you're going to be coming in and out of and updating. And it's just, kind of worth reflecting on the changes that you make. Does that mean you should update the progress score, and do you need to leave a status update to let people know what's going on, basically? Right, I think we're nearly at time. I'm going to pause for breath for a second. Lewis, anything I need to pick up on?
I think we had a few questions. Hi, can you say what the letters mean? I think that's in relation to the chart types. I did pop in a help article about that, considering the time that we have.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you had anything else to add onto that.
Just underneath that field, there was this need help choosing a chart kind of little link. If you click that, it will open up and it will show you the description of each of the chart types. So that's worth looking at when you're in the system.
Cool, fab. We had another question in regards to importing data from a spreadsheet into LiveQI charts. So could you do it one column at a time, but it would have to be all of the columns all at once in that situation?
Yeah, I don't think you can paste sort of one column at a time. I think it works best if your spreadsheet's kind of lined up in such a way that you've got, you know, the columns that match what's expected in LiveQI. You grab all the columns and as many rows as you need and paste that in. I don't think it will paste one column at a time, but I'm not 100% on that.
Bro, thanks, Jace. We've just had one more question come in. This looks great, and I can't wait to get started. Is there help available if I get stuck on anything?
Yeah, good point, and a useful sort of point to finish up on as well. So yeah, there's a few different ways of getting help, resources and sort of in-person support as well. So a few things to point out. At the top of most pages, you'll find a get help link, or a project page that says get help with projects. If we were on the measures page, it would say get help with measures. If you click that, it'll open up in a separate tab. It'll open up our help center, which you can also get to at just help.lifeqisystem.com. This gives you step-by-step articles on how to do everything in the system. Basically, you can see all the different areas that make up the platform within the project space. You know, say starting a new project, click on that, it will give me the guide for this basically, and it's going to load up a video here in a second, as well as the step-by-step guide, you know, literally walking you through step by step. And I think this will be like a 2 or 3 minute video. So if you've got a very specific kind of question or you're stuck with something, there'll be a video and there'll be a guide to help you get through that. The other thing you'll notice when you're in the system is you'll see this little kind of blue speech bubble icon in the bottom right hand corner. That's the kind of live chat type icon. So you can click on that. And that will allow you to start a live chat with a member of our team. It'll also allow you to help. You can search the help articles from here. So you can basically search the help center from here when you're still in the system. So you've got those options, or you can pop us an email. So we are help@lifeqisystem.com. That will come through to the same people that will be manning the live chat as well. So yeah, there's a few different ways of getting support there. But I would certainly recommend basically clicking the link at the top of the page that you're on, and that will probably get you through to the right part of the help center. And if you're then still stuck, you can use the kind of the live chat or email us basically. Okay, I think we're at time. I think we've had our 45 minutes. I hope that's been helpful. That was very much just the basics of getting started and populating a project. We haven't touched on all the other areas, but there are other webinars that will dive into things like programs, reports and analytics, those sorts of things, and even one dedicated to the admin functionality. So do look out on the webinar page, which you can get to at the top of the website in the resources section. Come in there, you will see what we've got upcoming, and it's also included in the roundup emails as well. So yeah, hope that's been helpful. Thanks everybody, and see you next time.